Metaphor Fantazio is phenomenal, and one of the things that makes it so great is the Archetype system, which gives the game a sizable amount of variety and customizability as every archetype functions quite uniquely. In this series, we're going to go through and talk about all the different lineages and archetypes, covering their strengths, weaknesses, and even how they can be best used. And today, we're going to talk about the in-game bruiser, the Berserker. Berserker is a lineage consisting of two archetypes, the namesake Berserker and Destroyer. They resist all three physical damage types, but have a weakness in light and dark. Additionally, they have an affinity for the striking damage type. With that said, let's now move on to their individual abilities, starting with Berserker, who has 3 attacks, 2 support abilities, and 1 passive. The attacks include Slam Strike, a medium striking attack that hits a single target, a Slam Shatter, the same attack but as an AoE, and Frenzy, a heavy hitting striking attack that hits all enemies 1 to 3 times. For their support abilities, Berserker has Charge, which greatly buffs their next physical attack, however this ability can only be used once per battle, and Warcry, which reduces the attack and defense of all enemies by a single stage. Finally, their only passive ability, which is also a lineage passive, is Sense of Kinship, providing a 10% boost at its weakest and roughly a 20% damage boost at its strongest. But with the normal abilities covered, let's now move on to their synthesis skills, of which there are 4. Rampage Slash is a single target extreme slashing attack. Wild Boar is a single target extreme piercing attack that lowers the target's attack by 2 stages. Wanton Destruction is a single target extreme striking attack that inflicts a one-time weakness to striking. And finally, they have Battlecry Tackle, an AoE heavy striking attack that ignores resistances and hits 1 to 3 times. But with Berserker done, we now move on to Destroyer, who has 4 attacks and 3 passives. Starting with their attacks, Powerful Pulverizer is a heavy single target striking attack, Stormbreaker Axe is a medium single target electric attack that removes enemy buffs, Windbreaker is a medium single target wind attack that lowers enemy defenses, and lastly, Radiant Crush is a heavy single target light attack that ignores resistances. As for passives, Revenge Seeker increases damage as HP decreases, Health Vessel increases maximum HP by 30%, and Short Range Boost increases damage by 10% while in the front row. But with the normal abilities covered, we now move on to their synthesis skills, most of which are the same as Berserker's, though they do have one addition: Deadly Eraser, a severe single target almighty attack that removes statuses, repels, and strength buffs. However, with that, we're done with the ability, so let's now head into the pros and cons, starting with Berserker and their strengths. The first of which is their resistances, as taking reduced damage from every physical damage type makes them incredibly bulky compared to other archetypes. Their next strength is how varied their default kit is, as having access to not only Charge but Warcry means that for the most part they're rather self-sufficient and don't necessarily need another supporting archetype to get the most out of their damage. Their third strength is their decent synthesis pool, which, along with providing them access to every physical damage type, can also help create weakness loops thanks to the multiple one-time weakness inflicting attacks. And their last strength is the fact they have ways to bypass physical resistances. But with that, we now move on to their weaknesses, for which there's really only one, that being their MP costs, as both Warcry and Frenzy are incredibly expensive to use to the point that they can completely drain your MP in only a few uses. But with that, we now move on to our second archetype, the Destroyer, and their strengths. Now, obviously, given that resistances are lineage-based, Destroyer shares the same bulkiness as Berserker. However, Destroyer does have some added heft thanks to their Health Vessel passive, giving them some extra health. Speaking of which, their second strength is Revenge Seeker, as this passive is easily the strongest damage amp in the game, given that you're at low health. But moving on to their next strength, they boast a wide range of damage types, including wind, electric, and light, and of course, all the physical damage types. But along with their wide range, they also have a variety of effects, such as buff removal and stat reduction. And lastly, like Berserker, they have an incredibly strong synthesis kit. But with that, we move on to their weaknesses, which again, there's really only one, that being, if you want to take full advantage of a Revenge Seeker, you not only have to keep yourself in one-shot range, but you also have to find a way to consistently get to low health. However, with that, we're done with the pros and cons, so let's now move into the builds, for which I have 2 to show, one for Berserker and one for Destroyer. Starting with Berserker, one of the earliest builds you'll be able to use for this archetype is a Charge build, where you obviously use Charge to deal a massive amount of damage in a single hit, usually with Frenzy and/or Wanton Destruction. The inherits that you'll want for this are Strike Boost from Pugilist, Attack 4 from Samurai, Heat Up from Warrior, and Front Boost from Warlord if you're using Frenzy, or Arcane Unity from Wizard if you're using Wanton Destruction. A notable accessory for this build is the Phantasmal Doll, which allows you to charge and attack immediately after. Moving on to our Destroyer build, this one aims to take full advantage of Revenge Seeker by preemptively getting Destroyer to low health so that they can do massive damage in the first few turns. As for inherits, there are two sets that you can choose from. The first set, which is focused on weakness and is more consistent, uses Wanton Destruction as the main damage source, aiming to abuse that one-time weakness over and over again. The inherits for the set are Strike Boost, Sense of Kinship, Arcane Unity, and Spiral Fist from Martial Artist to lower your health, at which point you can replace it with Heat Up from Warrior. The second set is the crit set, and while not as consistent, is significantly more powerful and can potentially one-shot. The inherits for this version are Almighty Boost and Critical Trade from Tycoon, Diligent Discipline from Brawler, and of course Spiral Fist to set your HP, which you can then replace with Arcane Unity afterwards. Now, alongside the inherits, you'll also want to have a support character using Adventurer's Curiosity from Soul Hacker, and since this is a crit build, the go-to accessory is the Gambler's Manual. Also, both sets benefit from having separate party members using Front Boost from Warlord and Persona Master for Masquerade Charge. But that's all I have to share about the Berserker lineage. If you found this video helpful, please consider liking it and possibly subscribing to the channel. Also, if you know any other fun or powerful synergies that I didn't mention, please share them in the comments, though do be mindful of spoilers. With that, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.